Oh my goodness. Hey, hi, it's Mike. Did you know that Abe and Bridget and me are trying to make a movie right now? Yes, right dang now. It's called Papa Bear. It tells the poignant and hilarious true story of the time my dad came out as a gay furry when I was 17. If you care about that at all, please head to seedandspark.com/fund/papa-bear to find out much more about the project, how you can be a part, and earn really cool rewards for helping us out. See you there. Here's your pod. Thanks so much.
Spielboys watching Stevie's movies. Spielboys watching Stevie's movies. Spielboys watching Stevie's movies. Spielboys.
Time and time again, we find ourselves back here in the orbit of Stevie.
We two humble Spielboys.
His exploding star sucking us in with his gravity. We cannot escape. That is all.
Bathed in his stardust.
That's right. He said it. We're the Spielboys. I'm Abe Epperson.
I'm Tom Ryman.
And we are the titular Spielboys. How about this one, Tom? Terminal 2004, a brisk 2-hour film about a man stuck in an airport. It's real zany, ain't it?
Yeah, this is an odd one. This has long been a Stevie blind spot for me. I have never seen this movie before.
Oh, wonderful.
This was the first time. This sort of came out during a period where, I don't know, we'll talk about it. But yeah, I missed this one for 20 years now. So
yeah, and it's more or less like a Looney Tune. I think you enjoy it more if you look at it like that. Little bit Pink Panther and such. It really Mr. Beans it up, you know?
Yeah, there's a little bit of Roadrunner in there.
A little bit of Roadrunner, as we've learned, is something that Stevie loves, and for good reason. There's a lot of stuff to love in it. There's also, early on before Hanks learns English, there's enough games with fool comedy and, like, immigrants. That's a little bit regrettable. The old folly to the homage of the archetype.
It's a little dated in that way. Before we begin to experience Victor as a three-dimensional character, it really does lean on some of those wacky foreigner tropes.
Yeah, but it's Stevie, so it comes from a wholesome place of love, or you assume it does, just because that's his MO, it seems. So that's what we're up to. That's what we're talking about today. I think we should slide into our first segment.
I think we should too. I think we should. I'm ready for sliding.
Let's slide right into Amblin' Man. That's right. This is the context, the background of where Spielberg kind of was an artist before he made this film. And kind of what was this period? We're treating him like a Picasso, like a great painter.
Yeah, what was the stage of his career? What was like the temperature of his vibe at the time? Yeah. What was going on with Stevie?
Tell me about it, Tom.
Oh, man. Well, I draw a lot of what I'm talking about today from a book that I've referenced a few times, The Men Who Would Be King by Nicole Laporte. It's specifically about DreamWorks, and this was a DreamWorks picture. Unfortunately, if you know anything about DreamWorks, you know that it's sort of like a now legendary example of failure to launch, sort of. Where it had all these lofty goals. It was this powerhouse production studio between Spielberg, David Geffen, and Jeffrey Katzenberg, and it just never lived up to its promise. And in 2004, when The Terminal came out, it was like right in the middle of one of the worst periods of DreamWorks. They coming off the previous winter, a couple of bombs that were supposed to get them Oscar love that didn't, like House of Sand and Fog. And the animated Sinbad movie starring Brad Pitt, which that's like a fucking trivia question right there. Mm-hmm. And like right before The Terminal came out, they had a bunch of bombs that were all comedies, weirdly. Like Envy, that Ben Stiller Jack Black movie, Euro Trip, and Win a Date with Tad Hamilton. So that's the kind of
real mid shit that we're talking about. Do you think that when they look at, do you think that Geffen and Spielberg look at each other and they say like, "We'll always have Shrek"?
I know Katzenberg says that a lot. I know he really clings to that.
He's really just living up the Shrek dreams.
Yeah, but yeah, like that string of titles I just read off. This is a dark time for DreamWorks.
It's Euro Trip dark is what I would call that. Definitely. Yeah, this is like his 2000s run, right? Like
this is one of his post 9/11 movies. Weirdly,
it is, yeah. And like, let's draw that for us. Like the 2001 came with AI, and then 2002 is Minority Report and Catch Me If You Can. 2 films started before 9/11 happened, right? But then immediately we get Terminal, War of the Worlds, and Munich. Those are like his post 9/11 films, which is interesting.
Yeah, they're all like really different takes on it.
Basically, of the 5 I listed, there's 2 movies about airports and manipulation, a film about predetermining someone doing a crime, and a film about a seemingly unstoppable and unknown enemy, and a film about religious warfare. So, yeah, 2 of those productions predated 9/11, but I'm not saying that it's not on the table that Steven Spielberg knew about 9/11 before it happened. I have no sources, and frankly, I did not search. But
maybe he did.
Kind of knew what was going on.
Maybe that's one of the secrets E.T. told him before he flew off to his homeworld.
I think it's kind of insane he had a run like this. Like,
it's nuts in retrospect. Like at the time, it kind of felt like it felt a little bit like Spielberg was doing mid shit, like you said earlier. But like I think it's just because I wasn't quite old enough to be introspective about 9/11. I was 18 when it happened, so I was all very reactionary. Not that I was a gung-ho pro-Iraq war guy, but it was all like, when you're 18, you sort of react to the immediacy of things rather than sit there and ponder, well, what does this mean to me? What does this mean for society at large? Yeah. What will this mean as the decades play out? And Spielberg was really thinking about that shit. So like watching I had this experience when we covered War of the Worlds. But watching it again, like I saw it in 2005 and thought it was kind of meh, but watching it when we covered it recently, I was like, oh shit, this is like a gnarly ass 9/11 movie. Yeah, like I get it now. So I'm glad I saw The Terminal now as opposed to 2004.
Before you saw that. Yeah, for real. Because it's kind of, we will talk about that, but just I think it's interesting to note that career-wise, they are all not one topic, of course. Nothing is monolithic, but
I don't think the different topics can't coexist either. I think they could all be part of the same, not opinion, but like the same way you feel about what it means. Like,
it's like a multi-movie, like fairly complex series of thoughts that are kind of add up to like a wider statement in a row. And that's unique for Spielberg. He kind of does, Color Purple, or, he does like his important movies, Schindler's List and all that stuff. Like he had something to say, but they're like, he wants to stay evergreen. He also kind of fancies himself a desperado. Something that we knew that in early days, he was influenced by his peers and such, but also by the criticism, he wanted to shuck that, initially being typecast or like being a typecast director. He didn't want to like be typecast as like kind of, the guy who was doing car movies and such. And then Jaws came out and it was just like, oh, you rely on the blockbuster thrill based, and then he was considered too over sentimentality, like was his, what they accused him of and things like Hook and such. And then he made, so he started making Schindler's List, Amistad, Saving Private Ryan at the end of the 90s. And I think Catch Me If You Can and The Terminal were a bit of a return to like film basics. Like in Catch Me, it's all about editing and pacing. In Terminal, it's about space and frame. And I think there's something in that. He always wants to be, he considers himself that desperado, like, you can't contain me, baby. And it's weird to see that he's like, no, something huge happened. I'm going to make, a few statements about kind of this one event and how it affected society. And that's unique for the Amblin man, as we say.
Yeah, it's. I don't think he's done this before or since. Made like a series of films about meditating about a single topic that is like a current event.
Right. So. Exactly. Yeah. For real. So I think that can wrap up Amblin, man. That's a good...
It sure can.
That's where Spielberg was, and let's move on to the next segment, the bulk segment. You're doing it, Stevie.
You're doing it, Stevie.
Yeah, let's get into it. We're going to go more or less scene by scene, talk about the themes, talk about execution, and just whatever the hell we want to, and laugh about it. Okay, I'm the quarterback this time.
Couple of chuckle fucks. Yeah, you are.
We're having so much fun just talking about his movies.
Movies.
I
like movies.
So the open image is not that great. First off, I want to say that usually Spielberg's normal fanfare is to make the opening image of the film somehow a kind of parable for the movie, or like a postcard of what you're about to see. And we just see like airport border agents. It's kind of expositional not a little metaphor that we're supposed to see. But we learn that Tom Hanks is not allowed into the United States because of the fictional country Krakosia, which he's a citizen, has had a coup d'etat, and the U.S. no longer recognizes his government, and therefore his passport is void. And Stanley Tucci explains this by pointing at a bag of chips and saying Krakosia.
The whole scene is, I mean, I know what it's saying. I know what the point of that scene is, but like the way that Stanley Tucci, who plays this guy Frank Dixon, who's like the acting field commissioner of the airport, he's just a real curmudgeon. The way he plays him is, especially in this scene, it's just like, what, like, why on earth would you think this guy who knows 3 words of English is following this explanation? But of course, that's the point. The point is that he doesn't care. He wants to dump him off. It's about bureaucracy and impersonalness and getting lost through the cracks and all these rules and borders and bureaucracies we invent that prevent human connection, I think is one of the ultimate ideas in the movie.
Which is why he immediately smashes a bag of chips in Tom Hanks' face. He's basically saying you're not a human.
Yeah.
Yeah, and because of the language barrier, Tom Hanks doesn't really understand what's happened. So we spend the first 10 minutes, 15 minutes of the movie, him just getting his head around the concept that he's going to have to live here because he can't go anywhere for a bit.
Yeah, and I wanted to... Well, actually, that we can save that for the next section. Never mind. But I just real quick, I'm sure you probably noticed this in your notes as well. This is based on a real guy.
Oh yeah. To walk us down that path.
I guess we could go over it more in the next section. But I guess, do you feel like it belongs here, or I don't? It's basically.
I don't give a fuck.
All right, there was a guy named, I'm probably butchering his name, but Mehran Karimi Nassiri, who was stuck in Terminal 1 of Paris's Charles de Gaulle Airport for 18 years.
Yeah.
And then he wrote about it in a book called The Terminal Man.
Yeah. And he, Stevie bought the rights to this. Did you know that I read an article that said he died in 2006, 2 years after the film was made. He died of a heart attack in the airport. He was still living in the airport. And the concept is that he lost his refugee papers during an overlay and was denied entry to France. And he chose to live in the airport rather than like, well, if you won't let me get into France, I don't want to go home. So I'll just live here. And they're like, fine with that for 18 years.
18 goddamn years.
That is wild.
Yeah, it's nuts. Anyway.
So it's like, yeah, so it's Looney Tunes shit, but it's crazy that it comes from reality.
You're right, and like the real life story was way, way more extreme.
Right, yeah.
Like Tom Hanks is stuck for 9 or 10 months in this movie. This guy was there for 2 decades.
Right, yeah, which you just like, what? solve that problem, right?
Yeah. Why should
Like,
that be a thing? Yeah. Like,
why is there a limbo? That's annoying and horrifying at the same time. So he's brought to his new home, which is the International Transit Lounge. And the camera like swirls around him, so we know it's overwhelming, which is a thing that a lot of filmmakers do, but definitely Spielberg does. And
yeah, he's definitely very small in frame for a lot of this first part of the movie.
Right, yeah, he's being absorbed by his background.
Yeah, and he's isolated, and yeah.
It's good stuff.
All that good stuff about movie making.
And there's some lines, he's like, what do I do? And the answer that he gets from, the airport worker is, the only thing you can do here, shop. And we get our first capitalistic takedown of the movie. Stevie versus capitalism. Let's go. 12 rounds. Well, it's, it's not that. It's not that impressive. He's a corporate filmmaker, so he's not going to take it down. But he's going to have some sharp words for capitalism. Oh, boy.
The one that was, and this is a little, I guess it's a little heavy-handed, but like the one you see the most consistently is Borders bookstore. So like in many, many scenes, you're seeing the word Borders in the background.
Yeah, he fell in love with that because it's like a bookstore, and also it's like that's why he can't get to where he needs to go.
That's what the movie is about, man. Like borders.
Why is the borders?
Like we waste so much time worrying about borders, which are made up, and it's getting in the way of us meeting each other face to face, human to human.
Also Boss and Burger King gets like real. Like Burger King at one point gets like a whole like 4 ads in a row because it's a montage of Tom Hanks eating your Burger King. Nailed it, Burger King. Whoever got that scene in there.
Well, I'll tell you. I'll tell you in the next section.
Ooh, I'm excited, Tom.
But there's another thing I appreciated, or I may not appreciate it, but I thought it was kind of an interesting way to present it. Is like Tom Hanks' situation is he's stuck in sort of like a holding area or like a limbo or like a neutral zone, essentially. And that's kind of also what like the airport is itself, obviously both for people because it's people coming and going from many different countries and they're here together. Yeah. But it's reflected by all the different shops. It almost feels like you're in the neutral zone. And then there's all these other countries, all the different stores surrounding you, just like with their loud ass signs and stuff. I don't know. It felt like an additional hit on that theme to me.
It's meant to be oppressive because, as we'll learn, the movie that he was kind of parodying or like was really inspired by was more or less a vicious takedown of the French government's reaction to post-World War II, which was to modernize everything, which, everyone was like sad about. Anyway, though, he sleeps that night. He's sleeping now in an abandoned airport gate. It's seemingly under construction. He bathes in bathroom sinks. So we get the sense that he can do some immediate living. Food becomes a major issue soon. But we see some of our main players that are going to kind of be vignettes throughout the story. Zoe Saldana shows up as a customs officer.
Yeah.
And befriends an unfriendly janitor at one point. Mm-hmm. At least they start to have a rapport, and he eats condiments and crackers for food on the first day.
It's whatever he can get for free because he loses all of the. Tucci gives him a bunch of meal certificates, but he immediately loses them.
He immediately loses them because it's wacky and zany in Pink Panther. Stanley Tucci's also lined up for a big promotion, and his boss is retiring with his new boat, which we all know is the American dream, just yachts for everyone, right? Yeah. And Stanley Tucci, who also loves to fish, he's got his eyes on that yacht, man. He can't recall that on day 2, I believe, he can't recall that he forced Tom Hanks to live in the airport. He just assumed he would leave, I guess, and get deported.
He has to be reminded who he is, and then I think the implication is that he just assumed the guy wouldn't listen to him and would just leave. Because
so
the
he
next
can be imprisoned. Yeah,
the next thing he does is try to sort of push Tom Hanks to walk out the door.
Exactly. And this seems like it's something that will like affect his promotion, which is his like one character want. So he's basically like, go be free, like Harry and the Hendersons.
Well, he's also it's like his one want that's like a specific thing, but I feel like he seems to be like in D&D like alignment terms, I think you'd call him like lawful neutral. Like he just all Tucci cares about is the letter of the law. So he is such a bureaucrat. He is so following.
That's the archetype.
Yeah.
I mean, you're absolutely right that's like he's just kind of representative of like the drum follow the rules kind of thing.
Specifically the obstacle nature of it, like the antagonistic nature of all this bureaucracy.
Well, he definitely grows to a place where he straight up is evil. He's an evil man.
He starts bending the rules, as the movie goes on.
He's just like, I just hate Tom Hanks.
Right, he becomes obsessed with him for some reason.
Oh, the Tooch.
And then very quickly lets him go at the end, but we'll get there.
It's funny, though. It's, you can't deport Victor because he's not in America technically, so the point of the movie becomes this game of chicken between Tucci and Hanks, who will budge. Tom Hanks eventually meets Catherine Zeta-Jones, who is a flight attendant, whose first act in the movie, Tom? Do you remember what her first act in the movie is? The first thing that we see?
She falls. Her heel breaks.
She slips on her ass because she's a charmer.
Yep.
I don't know. I just thought you'd get a kick out of that because it's like huge Ivan Reitman, Julianne Moore, and evolution energy. Like, we don't have a character. What could she do?
We don't have anything for you. Maybe you can fall down?
She could be a klutz.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe you're a klutz, lady.
She is a bananas character in this movie.
Yeah, something else.
I get what she represents. But she's like, she's barely a character. I think it's the weakest part of this movie is trying to play up a romance between the two of them.
I think it's because you get the feeling, especially with just the stars that are there, that you're like, all right, so this is going to be like a real romance. And then you're like, no, remember, it's built in the landscape of cartoons. All of the vignettes are one-dimensional characters with one want. I want to date Zoe Saldana. That's all it is. So it does feel weird that it's also like hints at the romantic arc, kind of like where this is a romance, which arguably it is, but it's not supposed to be, is what I would argue is just like a part of Tom Hanks's journey, because they definitely flirt. I mean, straight up they go like Tom Hanks wants to be with her.
They go on an airport date. They have a smooch, but they ultimately go their separate ways.
Yeah, exactly. And the whole movie is as sexy as you can imagine. Catherine Zeta-Jones and Tom Hanks. And Tom Hanks
heating up the screen.
And I love it because
it's also Tom Hanks wearing a selection of outfits that my grandfather definitely owned. Like they nailed the Eastern Europe style.
Right.
Because that is exactly how my Polish grandfather dressed.
We get the first of several fun and games sections. That's really the fun. I mean, why you do a cartoon. Tom Hanks returns left out shopping carts because a kiosk dispenses quarters. Allows him to like buy some food with the quarters. He finds books with Hungarian translations so he can learn English. So we get the feeling that a few days go by and he's doing all these things. Baby Diego Luna arrives.
I know. He was so young I almost didn't recognize him.
I know.
I was like, is that oh shit, it's Andor.
Yeah. And he's some kind of cargo driver. He drives food around the airport, and he notices that Hank's spending a lot of time alongside Zoe Saldana, and he's like, hey, I'll broker a deal with you, Hanks. If you give me info on Saldana, I'll give you food, because I can tell that he's a baggage guy, and he's given him the flight meals, basically the pre-wrapped tray flight meals. Exactly. And it's like a classic meet cute through proxy thing, like
it's a real Cyrano thing. Yeah.
Does this work? on you? This trope, like, because there's little bits where like Tom Hanks goes like, yeah, he's a man of misery, like no cheat, which it's like sounds like no shit, but he means no cheating. Man of misery is man of mystery. Like there's little games they play. I don't know if it works on me.
It doesn't, but I accepted it. If that makes sense. Yeah. I was like, okay, like this doesn't really work on me, but I get that it's like supposed to be cute and it's in tone with the rest of the movie. So I'm like, I wasn't like angry with it. It's not
anything. It's not anything to write home.
It's just like too superficial, I think.
It's just like, yeah. And I guess what we're talking about is that like romance telephone thing. Like we've seen it multiple times, but it's like so unrealistic and silly at this point that I'm like, we can retire it, I feel like.
Right. It's so unrealistic that it builds to Diego Luna proposing to Zoe Saldana and she accepts, and they've never spoken to each other before.
Which is wild.
Which is
absolutely wild.
Man, Stevie with your little...
Yeah.
Your whimsy and your dream dust.
They might as well be like cartoon mice. Like it's
honestly, just, it really is like a couple of cartoon dormice.
Yeah, just like having a dream and a song in their heart. Yep. Everything's gonna be better.
I'm in love with that mouse because she has a bow in her head. That's pretty much it.
The next move is from Tucci. The next Move-Chi. He wants Hanks to say he's scared to go back home so he can pass Hanks off to an immigration judge. And he makes a principled stand.
So he's trying to get him to say he's seeking asylum.
Yeah, and Hanks is like, no, I see what you're doing. You're trying to get me. Like, no, I'm going to play outside the rules. Baby, I'll wait.
Oh, I didn't take it like that.
Oh, I thought he knew.
No, I took that Tom Hanks didn't quite understand because... Tucci is like, okay, you can go home, but all you have to do is say that you're afraid to go back to Krakosia. And he's like, okay, so I'm going to ask you the question, and you just answer just like we talked about. Are you afraid of Krakosia? He's like, am I afraid of Krakosia? No, I fear no fear. So I feel like he was answering honestly and not doing a Bugs Bunny thing.
Well, it's not Bugs Bunny. In fact, I think you're absolutely right in that, like, if you look at Clouseau or like Pink Panther, it's Schrodinger's kind of position on this. Like it's kind of both. And one, the filmmaker wants you to be like, yeah, serendipitously.
He's being endearingly honest to his own detriment. Like he's hurting himself with his honesty in this scene.
To point out the flaws.
But it's charming.
It's charming.
Yeah.
It's a real charm fest. We get a little bit more movement on Catherine Zeta-Jones. Her little vignette. We witness her in love with a man, and then she's dumped. And Hanks acts as like kind of an ear to her, makes her laugh. She assumes he's a contractor because he's got a visitor badge and such. And
he's there all the time.
Or he denies her advances, which is great. We get a montage with Hanks applying for jobs because he realizes that he must raise enough money to have a dinner with Catherine Zeta-Jones. And they laugh. They all laugh him away because he doesn't exist. He's a ghost in a hellish kind of landscape.
Right. He's locked in fucking limbo. He really is haunting this airport. Like he has no address. Like there's a comic scene where he's trying to get hired at, I don't know, fucking FYE or some shit. And he gives him the payphone phone number right outside the store as his phone number.
Exactly. And like, there's a scene that I find is actually seemingly innocuous, but is a horrifying scene if you read it in a certain light, which is Tom Hanks finds a half-finished wall in the construction area that he lives, and he proceeds to finish the wall apropos of nothing. What do you think causes him to do this, Tom? The feeling of control over 1 second of his miserable life?
The feeling of the love butterflies in his tummy. He wants to. He
makes him make a wall,
and it's even more than that. It's like an unfinished wall that has water fountains on it. So he tears the fountains out and builds like this cascading fountain with like this majestic tile work, and he builds it all for Catherine Zeta-Jones.
He's very good at carpentry.
I think I can't remember if the film says, but I think we're supposed to understand that he's some sort of contractor back in Krakosia. Yeah, he's like a builder.
Yeah.
He clearly knows exactly what to do when he's building stuff.
I prefer to read this film as a man's descent into madness.
Yeah. Well, I can control this wall, damn it.
Damn it. Let me out.
He's like slapping tile on there, just screaming to the heavens, I still exist.
He's just Jonathan Pryce from Brazil. Turns out he's amazing. Who'd have thunk it? He meets with his familiar kind of airport workers, like the boys, the dogs. They play poker. They x-ray Tom Hanks. They find out that there's a Planters peanut can that he carries with him everywhere, and we get our little mystery box to dangle in front of us for later. We have another scene with the Jones out of Borders. She's really into Napoleon, and the only reason I bring this all up is that she says I have to go, and he says I have to stay, which is cute, and they're all playing their cartoon roles. Meanwhile, Tucci knows he's getting that Hanks is getting paid cash under the table, and turns out he makes more than Tucci, which is another knock on like the system, right? That it's like, you're not even paid well, dude.
Yeah.
And so while that's happening and he's realizing it, and he's like kind of having a monologue, pontificating to his right-hand man, he's gripping a literal controller, like a, I don't know, thing with knobs and shit.
Yeah.
It's just very on the nose. It's
just like the Borders that's constantly in the background.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not a subtle movie.
It's not subtle, which is, that's what I'd say about the early 2000s in our filmmaking in America. Yeah. Not subtle. There's a bet in the office as to when he's going to leave. So it's like there's now a cultural aspect of Tom Hanks existing. People are starting to find him beloved and a part of the, he's like the walls. He's a part of the system. And this just infuriates Tucci. He tries to send Tom Hanks to prison.
Yeah, he does.
And we get more Tucci. Then we get a sketch, a literal, this I thought was one of the more interesting aspects of the film, which is then we just jump right into Tucci is it's a Stanley Tucci ad in the middle of the film, how good he is at his job. And it's actually kind of hilarious because he is trying to impress his superiors, and we get a few little vignettes for him where he's calming a situation down with a Bulgarian man. He's like perfectly can identify who's carrying drugs with inside walnuts. Like, he's just amazing at his job. And in order to solve this one particular moment in customs with a Bulgarian man threatening officers with scissors, he recruits Hanks to translate the miscommunication, which is definitely how it would go in real life, Tom.
Absolutely. Right? Yeah.
Everyone would just, it's a big misunderstanding. We're the cops, and we okay.
Yeah, it's a little. It comes off as a little Aaron Sorkin, like a little wishful thinking. I mean, but that's Stevie.
That's Stevie, baby. That's why we love him. He gives us those feels. Hanks kind of uses his knowledge of immigration forms to point out a loophole, because it's Stanley Tucci's character to just crush all immigrants, apparently.
This is 2004.
Yeah.
We are 3 years off of 9/11. That was the climate.
That was the climate.
Especially in airports, man. This is no fucking joke.
Yeah, and the concept here is that the Bulgarian man was bringing medicine to cure his father.
Yeah.
But Hanks knows that, because he's been reading a lot of immigration forms trying to get out of his own situation, that there's a loophole where if he says it's not for a family member, but rather for
an animal,
his goats, like an animal or something that is his property, the man can go home with the medicine and
right. He doesn't need
save his father.
It's like he doesn't need to have prescriptions to prove that he needs this medicine if he says it's for an animal.
Right. And so now the game between Tucci and Hanks has escalated from "you're a thorn in my side" to "I hate this man interrupting my desire to see people fail.
Right. He wanted to fucking obliterate this poor guy's life. And like you see Tucci's face just get so angry in this scene. He's like, curse you, Tom Hanks.
And
your do-goodery.
So he gets point one for the good guys. The superiors see it and they go, oh no, that's not how it's done. And next scene, in order to evade Tucci, he buys a suit because he's like, it's 2 point. He's like, one, I'm going to woo Catherine Zeta-Jones with this awesome suit.
He's about to go on his airport date, yeah.
Yeah, and two, he's going to kind of help. He's going to ask help of Catherine Zeta-Jones to get him, like, is there a way to get me out of the airport? And he uses his boys to kind of help set up another meet. And so he's like planning on telling her everything, but like it doesn't really go well because Catherine Zeta-Jones meets with Stanley Tucci. And like there's it's a bait and switch that occurs, like, because unknowingly what happens is Hanks tries to set up and do the right thing, but he's just too late. They have kind of an elaborate private dinner just set up for the two of them. She confesses that she's been waiting on someone for 7 years, which is rough. That's a rough situation.
We get hints of it from overheard phone conversations and stuff. We briefly see her with this guy that she's seeing, and we know that he's married and like he's some big shot and he's not ever going to leave his wife. So yeah, she's in a dark situation. She's
in a dark denial.
Yeah.
And but they throw their pagers triumphantly into the distance as if to say fuck the system and we'll live for the now.
Yeah.
And Tom Hanks builds what we think at first is just another wall, but it actually is something else, only to be interrupted by the most outrageous offer. I think you mentioned this. Diego Luna asks Zoe Saldana to marry him. We have that plays out. They've never met. God damn.
It is so over the top.
They were just happy with Tom Hanks, again, a man with broken English, description of each other.
Yeah.
She says yes. Because they're also, she was a Trekkie. They're Trekkies. That's one of the things that they like. They're all about. I just think it's interesting that they're both in the Star Wars and Star Trek.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just weird. We're just like, yes, they are nerds. Steven Spielberg knew that too. What doesn't he know? Can he be stopped? Will he kill us all?
How much did E.T. tell him?
Yes. What do you know? What are your Spielberg
Tell us your
secrets?
Stevie secrets.
Tucci. So then, we get that scene where Tucci interrogates.
Wait.
You got something?
Steve Crits.
Whoa!
Is that anything?
Yes, we got it, boys. We got it. So this is where we get that, like, if this were a romance, which I guess it technically is,
kind of,
but it's not exclusive to that. This is where we get that beat of Tucci muddies the waters. He tells Catherine Zeta-Jones everything about Tom Hanks, so she thinks he's a maniac.
Right.
I also love in this scene. Stanley Tucci's character pauses the movie and says, look, you're so hot, Catherine Zeta-Jones. We have to understand it for the audience. Why Tom Hanks?
Break this down. Like
he literally says,
a legal pad.
Yeah, like, break this down for
Draw
us.
me a diagram.
And I honestly think that's Stevie covering his ass. I really want to work with Catherine Zeta-Jones. Does Catherine Zeta-Jones and Tom Hanks work for you? I don't know.
Maybe not.
Maybe not. I mean, that's just, I know it's all Hollywood fanfare anyway, but this meeting, turns out she does love older men. This meeting implies that she now knows the truth about Victor, and they could have been together if not for this terrible lie. And so when she kind of is in his space and he arrives back and realizes, oh shit, you know everything about me, he points out, because they have this Napoleon thing going. He's like, what did Napoleon give to his lover? And we find out that he's built a fountain for her as a reference to the Napoleon shit, and she fucking loves it, but she does think he's a maniac. So he shows
he lives in an airport and builds fountains to express himself.
Yeah. Yeah, and then his next knee-jerk reaction is to show her the old peanut can. It reveals why he's in New York.
Doesn't Tucci put that in her mind?
Yes.
Isn't Tucci like, have you ever asked him what's in that coffee can? Like, he thinks it's anthrax or something. Know. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's the implication of, it's the immigration thing. It's Stevie's playing with that shit. But yeah, so the whole story, what's in the peanut can? His father saved a shit ton of big name jazz musicians' signatures, and he's here to get the last signature for his father. And she's just all hot about his fountain and that story. So yeah, that's kind of how that scene ends. Nothing happens from it. They're just like, that's why.
Right. There's a conflict.
He explains that she's fine with it.
Right. And it's immediately resolved.
Yeah. She's like, yeah, how can you do this? How can you do this? Let me show you my peanut can. Oh, cool.
Oh, shit. That's a pretty magical peanut can.
That's a great story. And now you're A-okay in my book because you're not a maniac because you have a peanut can. I mean, I believe
you're just a fountain building dude with a heart of gold.
So weird.
A peanut can in his heart.
I mean, it's a beautiful fountain, though. Like, beautiful.
It's pretty sweet. Yeah, it doesn't work, as I remember. Like, doesn't he try to turn it on and the water doesn't work?
Yeah, it's works in progress, man. But then the next morning, the war is over, and now he's got a reason to stay. Catherine Zeta-Jones finds him while he's celebrating with his boys, and all of like the whole airport is into him at this point. And she's like, I got a 1-day travel visa to New York. I found, well, it's like my friend who's hooked up, gave me an emergency one. And, but she says like, and he's like, you go with me. Like now we're an item, right? And she's like, no, because the person I communicated to get you that visa is the person who, I've been waiting for. And now that we've kind of been reunited, like that was your role in this story. You were never going to be the guy. You were the guy that led me to the old flame. And now he's in the picture, which is wild. That's a wild turn of events.
Yeah. It's a really crazy thing to happen at the very end of this movie.
Yeah.
Is Catherine Zeta-Jones to come in out of nowhere. I got you a day pass. You can, it was, I don't know. It felt a little sweaty to me when it happened.
Yeah, it's Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah, it sure is.
Yeah, Deus Zeta-Jones. I don't know.
Deus Zed Machina.
Zed Machina. There it is. Turns out the emergency visa needs to be signed by the Tooch. Who hates him?
Tooch.
Fuck. Who gives Hanks his passport and visa, and he says, "Just go home, buddy. I don't even want to fight you anymore. Just go home." But Hanks is like, "No, I got my visa. Sign it. And I'm going to go to New York now because he's a principled man who has a mission to accomplish."
He's been waiting there 10 fucking months to do it too.
Yeah. And to which, Tom,
I know,
Tucci threatens to deport all his friends.
Tucci has a meltdown.
Who are workers in his employ, by the way.
Right, he's trying to deport his own staff.
His own workforce, and he's like, I wouldn't do this normally. I'm fine. I'm entirely fine just employing illegal immigrants or whatever. Like, I don't give a shit.
The main one is the janitor, Gupta, who we learn...
Yes.
It's like wanted in his home country for stabbing a policeman.
And so,
in the middle of this whimsical story.
There's also a scene of him just watching people slip on like the water.
It's like a running gag with him. He mops the floor, puts the wet floor signs up, and just sits by and watches as people ignore them and fall on their ass.
Literal psychopath.
Yeah, he's kind of like the Jigsaw killer in this movie.
Yeah, he really comes out of nowhere. It really escalates quickly, right? In that way, his friends plea for him to fight it because Hanks like relents. He's like, I'm not gonna let you, Tucci, deport my friends. So they lay down their life for him, and this is another thing the janitor does, which is he runs at a plane in order to stop it. That ensures his deportation. because it's a criminal offense. You know, the cars come and pick him up. But it's like, I guess that helps Tom Hanks. I guess.
I think it just distracts them. And also
he's
sort of
that's
like,
right.
because Tucci was kind of trying to blackmail Hanks using, well, I'll deport your friend Gupta, and he runs out and forces the issue. It's like, well, they caught me now, so they're gonna find out that I stabbed this policeman, and I'm gonna get deported.
Right.
But Tom Hanks, you can flee to New York City and have your jazz man sign your peanut can.
That's right. And he does. He gets that damn signature. And then back to the airport.
Benny Golson actually is the musician, and he's in the movie as himself.
And he's in the movie, yeah. And I love that the last kind of like series of shots is getting into a taxi cab back to the airport with Pete Hornberger from 30 Rock. And that's how we all die. And that's the terminal.
Yeah.
I just love Tucci screaming in his office during like the breakdown, like an evil weasel.
Yeah.
Like,
Tucci's great. I love Stanley Tucci.
He's just flailing around.
he's a perfect bastard in this movie.
Yeah. But
like a Spielberg bastard, where like at the very end, like Tom Hanks has gotten into a taxi somewhere, and Tucci's out there with all of his men. They're like, "Do you want us to close the airport off and we can go car to car? We'll find him." And Tucci's like, "Nah, let him go."
Yeah, let him go.
Real Spielberg bastard. Yeah.
Yeah.
Relents at the very end.
I see the point of all of this now.
Yeah.
It truly was a Forrest Gump. It's so Stevie to make the point of the journey to learn American culture and be immersed in American culture. Jazz, baby. Hey, look at all this jazz we got.
Well, yeah, his whole goal is to get a signature from a jazz musician. So that's like, it's about culture that is human, and it's meant to cross borders, and it's culture that shouldn't be specific to any nationality, because it's all about making a human connection. And that's like what the whole movie is about.
But it is patriotic because it's fundamentally Americana.
Jazz is a fundamental American art form. That's true.
But it's like, wholesome as fuck. Yeah.
It's about somebody coming from halfway across the world to experience American culture. And it's about sharing and rejoicing in that human connection. Like, we're not meant to be so defined by these borders, and the movie even seems to be saying that we're not meant to live within borders. Like, borders are meaningless and transitory. Like, his country falls and is restored immediately, and it's like, it's just this make-believe line that we keep drawing, and it's ever changing. The repeated visual motif of the arrival departure board that keeps flipping over times and destinations kind of reinforced that idea in my mind. It's like, oh, it's just like the borders, where it's not static, it's ever changing. So it's kind of like stupid that we're so beholden to all these lines we draw and all these rules and bureaucracies that we create that are also ever changing. Like, the rules are different. It's like a constant joke that we make about going to the airport, or like going to the DMV or something, a very bureaucratic process where you never know exactly what the rules are because nobody will ever tell you. It's like, I don't know if I'm bringing all the right forms because you're not telling me.
And it's that madness, that kind of, the more I do read it, I don't read this film as a man's descent into madness, but it's like he's faced with a form of existential absurdity, and it's painted on the backdrop of a hellish, like, capitalistic landscape where all you can do is buy and consume. And that's something that Stevie, I mean, there's a little teeth in it for Stevie.
I think so. It's because rather than recognize his basic humanity, like, the first thing Tucci says to him is go shop. You know, I think it's Tucci. Actually, it might be his second in command that says that.
It says that's all you can do here.
So it's like they rather than recognize his basic humanity, the first thing they recognize is his ability to be a consumer, and just plug him into that. And then, of course, that falls away, and he just becomes part of the family of this airport.
Which is wild.
Yeah,
I mean, that's wild. But
it's bananas. But like, I think the basic emotion that he's getting at is totally valid. It's like all this crap just dehumanizes us. We need to peel it all away, and then you see who these people all actually are, and how they can interact and connect with each other in meaningful ways.
Exactly. Also, Stevie points out something I noticed this watching is the methodology that Tom Hanks employs is kind of like, here's how I fight my wars. Waiting. He does it. His father talks about doing it with the jazz musician. It feels tailored to like middle America, like point to Stevie, like just a good weight, steady as she blows.
Yeah.
You're the middle of America. And what do? You sometimes you got to wait and just be
it's a little
in the sea of others.
It's a little turning the other cheek, right?
Right.
He's just like, well, I can just endure this. Like, he just keeps enduring all the ridiculous shit that Tucci unloads on him.
It's classic tale, right? That's Rocky. How does Rocky win a symbolic victory? By getting the shit kicked out of him.
Fucking ass beat.
Yeah, and it's just like, that's our champion? Yeah, that's America's boy right there.
He took it.
He just fucking took it. And that's what Stevie wants to say about middle America. Just take it. Just take your medicine. I don't think he says that.
No, I think you're right. That like a salt of the earth type thing, where it's like this is real people. We're getting down to the real people, and
that's what I'm getting
stripping away all this bureaucracy and all these silly rules and borders we invent for ourselves.
It's always something he always wanted to be like, I make movies for common people, like some universal themes, stuff like that. So he's always shooting as wide scoped as possible. And so those are some things that are indicative of it.
There's a tiny kernel, I think, of some criticism of the surveillance state. Maybe it's not that tiny of a kernel, but where I picked it up was some of the stuff with Gupta, and then a lot of the stuff with Hanks, and how it's like Tucci demanding to know what's in his peanut can or something like that, where it's like this movie seems to almost be a little bit like lamenting the loss of anonymity, of like your ability to disappear or like not be documented and listed and indexed in all these places, and how that's
he
maybe
lives in a glass panopticon ultimately, you know? So like there's this concept that he's always surveyed by the police state, which is Tucci, and that's literally showed by him controlling the cameras and the fun and games, kind of Pink Panther games that Victor plays, which is he can outrun some of the cameras or find the blind spots, because once again falls through the cracks. But there is early on with the airport workers, there's also surveillance, the concept of not just you hiding from the police state, but other people surveying other members of the society. Like there's he's a CIA agent at one point, is what they all widely have like thoughts of. This is what he is. Tom Hanks is this guy who's out to get us. Mm-hmm. He's almost like several characters ad hoc position, and of course they're proven wrong, because that's what Stevie wants to do in this.
Right. It's like it's like if you not knowing everything about a person makes you distrust them. Is sort of what he seems to be talking about, and like with the peanut can, and like what you were saying, like, oh, we don't know what he's here for. It's like he's just here, man. I don't know.
So he's nipping at the he knows what America's doing wrong. I think, he's a corporate filmmaker, so there's only so much he could say. I mean, you form your own opinion on that as you may, but
it's not.
This is Spielberg, baby.
This is a pretty whimsical version of a scathing indictment, so it's not particularly scathing, but like, it's there.
I mean, there's this quote that he has, Stevie, which is, "I wanted to do another movie that could make us laugh and cry and feel good about the world. This is a time where we need to smile more, and Hollywood movies are supposed to do that for people in difficult times." I think he entirely means that, and I think that's what the movie is.
I think that's accurate.
There's one thing I want to talk about right before we get in the next segment, which is, have you seen Playtime? Do you know what I'm talking about with Playtime? Have you heard of the movie? You heard about this?
You seen this? You heard about this?
Jacques Tati is a filmmaker who had a very popular French kind of clown character called Monsieur Hulot. And it's 1960s. France is rebuilding. 50s, 60s. Like, I think the film actually is supposed to take place in the 50s, and it's about the modernization of France after, all of its major cities were destroyed by the war. So everything and all of the culture of France, their buildings and like their squares, all the things that made, France feel like France, were bombed. And so they replaced it with these skyscrapers and modern glass concrete structures, and there's a grievement that happens in that film. And I really suggest everyone find it. It's one of those movies that, like, I think that anyone of any movie viewer will get a kick out of it because it does this special thing. It's basically a silent film. And what it does is it like creates a setting where the background is uniform almost always in some way. It's meant to kind of gaze your eye. Like an intricate pattern can become noise to us like a magic eye. So like repetition is something that the film will do a lot in creating a kind of canvas within a canvas for you to see something pop out of the background. And this allows things in the foreground and in select parts of the screen to pop out of their landscape. And it's amazing at doing this game and just training you essentially to look for all the different layers of tricks and jokes within that system. And it builds your expectation, and you kind of have to scan the film to see, like a Where's Waldo kind of way, searching for bits. And there is a lot. I mean, not only Spielberg has openly said it's kind of my love note to Playtime, but also there's he just straight up goes for some, like, not stealing the bits, but paying homage throughout the movie. It's a fun thing. And it's also about there's a lot of scathing viewpoints on the bureaucratic kind of grayscale world that modernism kind of exhibits. And an airport is like, in terms of it being a liminal space that is like, everything is sleek and clean and it can offend nobody.
Really, really sterile. Yeah.
Really sterile and has no life or culture in it.
Mm-hmm.
So also color-wise, the terminal isn't as controlled as Playtime, which is remarkably controlled. It's one of the things where it's like visually a feast, but it definitely takes a lot of pointers in terms of like, oh, I notice him out of all of the background of people because of Stevie's really good at positioning and distracting your eye. So he's really just kind of paying homage to it. And it's a really good homage. So I encourage people to watch Playtime and watch The Terminal again and kind of enjoy that experience. Anyway, that's enough on Playtime.
Sweet. I'm going to watch sweet, that. Though. Connect those
watch
dots.
The shit, dude. It's fucking fun as hell.
Yeah, I'll watch it.
Let's take a brisk walk into our next segment.
On the moving walkway.
Mm-hmm. This one's called Teamwork Makes the Dream Works, SKG.
Oh, yep.
So this is the team working behind the scenes, fun trivia. Tom, do you have anything for us?
I've got some trivia, some production notes, some BTS behind the scenes tidbits.
Yeah.
So Stevie was really uncertain about this movie. He did screen tests of it, which, according to the man who would be king, he hadn't done since Jaws. And that's a pretty big deal for a guy like Spielberg, who is basically anything you make is guaranteed to be released in theaters. And then he also shot 2 different endings for the movie. I don't know what the other ending is, but I assume it might be on the DVD. But yeah, so he kind of wasn't sure about this one, which I thought was interesting. They built, even though the movie takes place in JFK, which is the airport in New York City, The set that they made for the airport itself is actually a replica of Charles de Gaulle Airport, which is where the real life guy was stuck.
Yeah. I love that you realize most people probably don't even realize almost all of this movie is sets.
Mm-hmm.
It's fucking nuts. Those are huge.
I know. Well, there was actually a really the big reason for that was because post 9/11, during this period, you could not film in American airports. Period.
And the reason for that was 9/11.
9/11. So he had an entire replica of Charles de Gaulle Airport built in the Mojave Desert.
That is huge.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, it's so huge that they needed to use, or they didn't need to, but Stevie used this is one of the first feature films to utilize, if not the first, because I can't think of anything. Maybe Gladiator? Probably not. That's a little earlier. This elaborate thing called a spider cam, and it's what they use in stadiums. They like rig on the ends of stadiums, so that gives you the vision.
It's the XFL camera, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it actually is like a British kind of thing, because a lot of our games will just solve it with like, just throw some more cameras in there, and we have the sky cam. But this is like was a souped up brother that was actually for more like rugby and like cricket and stuff, because those pitches are a lot more like, and soccer, like you want to like get close and also be far away in a single shot, but also scanning across the entire spread of the field. So it's these essentially rigged suspension kind of these riggings that hold cables, and this thing can move vertically and horizontally in space at any combination diagonally, and it basically just can make the whole, like you can put a camera anywhere in physical space laid over something. And that's what he did with the sets, because they're so enormous. He needed to get the technology that you use to shoot stadiums.
So that's nuts. Yeah. Related to earlier, you mentioned the Burger King scenes where Burger King gets a lot of feature time. The massive set was partially paid for by all of the different brands and storefronts that you see in the movie.
That's why, I mean,
although according to the book that I read, The Men Who Would Be King, not as many as Katzenberg would have liked.
Of course. That's the thing. They're like, oh man. I think about this a lot, because it's also like, well, that's how you get it done. It's also like, yeah, but don't just shill for all these companies. But I guess that's as America as apple pie, baby.
Yep.
Yeah, it's just something. He's a corporate filmmaker. He's like, yeah, who wants in on this movie? I'll give you a shot, Coke or Burger King. It's kind of
Borders.
There's some exec at Borders who's like, does it feel like he's dunking on us a little bit? Probably. But so they were like, whatever.
I'm like the movie had a $60 million budget, although it's rumored to have been higher, and it's unclear because that set you would think that would cost a sizable chunk of that. They built a replica airport. That's nuts.
Yeah, you are an insane person.
And Spielberg not helping the budget was the fact that Spielberg flew to the set each day in a Sikorsky S-76 helicopter.
Yeah.
Out in the middle of the desert.
In the middle of the desert.
Mm-hmm. You expect him to drive? No. Stevie's not driving through the desert.
Fuck off. This is the first Spielberg film to use the digital intermediate.
What's that?
I just love the what's that?
What's that?
Digital intermediate is this thing called, like, you create a digital copy of the film, like work print, and you then put that in a computer and color grade that stuff. And then that's the final form of the movie. So sometimes you bounce it back to film. That's probably what Spielberg did here, because, he's just like, projectors are still alive and well. But now it's not even, there's no actual film projectors
digital,
in movie theaters. So, but that was 2000 when Oh Brother Where Art Thou came out, and that's the Coen brothers, and they were the first to really use it. And it's because they wanted to have a very controlled, like, kind of fantasy look, kind of fairy book. Everything's yellow and brown.
It's that sepia thing.
And in this film, they used it to kind of desaturate specific stuff that is harder to do with just, analog chemicals. But there's two or three movies that happened before that craze. Because like once the Coen Brothers did it, every movie did it. After that, they were like, "That just looks better."
Yeah,
and
that really took off after that.
Yeah, a lot of people argue, like, if you ever watch like the Harry Potter films or whatever, and you're like, why does everything look like that in the 2000s? This is why. It's just a new technology existed, and everyone's like, oh, we could do stuff like Sin City, or like make things look really stylized color-wise. And it took Stevie 2 films before he was like, okay, I'll use the technology. He's a very practical man.
Yeah.
He's not like George Lucas, who's like, oh, it's a new thing, I have to make a movie with it.
It took Stevie forever to get his movies onto DVD. Like I remember it being a long wait for some of those movies.
Yeah,
he was slow to adopt. Yeah.
For a pioneer of technology, specifically in movie making, it's interesting in that in the distribution and kind of post-production aspects, he is hesitant. He knows the tools he knows, and he doesn't necessarily is against change, but he's like, I'm gonna wait, which I think is pretty smart.
I totally get that.
Yeah,
it's like, well, no, I know how to use this version of Photoshop. If I update it, I'm not going to know what any of this is.
Right. And there's great filmmakers like Robert Rodriguez, George Lucas, who, are just like, this new technology, I'm going to find a way to, fuck with it immediately because that's what their vibe. So anyway, that's just something of note. Digital intermediate changed the way we see movies forever. What else do we got? We're talking about the teamwork. This one has Michael Kahn, John Williams. This is like standard Stevie missionary position in terms of his crew.
Mish position, yeah.
Right? It's even got Janusz Kaminski
hell yeah.
shot it again. A longtime collaborator at this point.
Mm-hmm.
He was Saving Private Ryan.
Yes.
So the Saving Private Ryan guy shot The Terminal. I love that. Just shows how versatile Kaminski really is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. Anything else from you?
I've got a couple more notes just about sort of the reception of the movie. Like, I think the movie is more fondly remembered now, but this was considered kind of an embarrassing flop for Spielberg at the time. It only grossed
220 million worldwide, though.
Worldwide, yeah, but it only grossed 77 million domestically.
Yeah, that's not the greatest.
And especially, as I said at the top, this was like a dark period for DreamWorks. So this was like, they were really, really upset over this film's release, which, interestingly, the movie did twice that number internationally. Like you pointed out, it came out as a success in the end. It was marketed by two different groups. DreamWorks' internal team marketed it domestically, and then they used another group called UIP for the international. And internationally, it did way better. So I don't know.
Maybe DreamWorks needs to get their shit together.
It was, man, you got to read this book, The Men Who Would Be King. It really, everyone listening, if you're enjoying Spielboys as a show and as a concept, you should read The Men Who Would Be King by Nicole Laporte. DreamWorks was the Wild West, man.
That's great. Yeah.
And then finally, just how the movie was received at the time. It's got like a 61 on Rotten Tomatoes, and it's generally favorable. But at the time, it really, like, the contemporary reviews were more harsh, to the point where Variety's editor-in-chief Peter Bart wrote in a memo, quote, "Is it possible Sir Stephen is suffering a case of the middle-aged blahs? Has the man who always makes magic somehow misplaced his wand?"
Such a weird thing.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I want to suck your dick, Stevie, but also I'm disappointed. It's very weird.
A lot of these film critic writers write very effusive language, but yeah.
I started this podcast with we are in Stevie's orbit, he is our god, which is a weird thing to say, apropos of nothing. I get it. I don't know. We're the Stevie. We're the Spielboys, though.
Yeah.
You know?
That's our
born
bad.
of this.
That's what we're about. Yeah.
So I don't know what this guy's fucking problem is.
I don't know. I brought that quote just to sort of illustrate, like, people were not into this movie, at least not in America.
It's making me mad, Tom.
When it came out.
Riling me up. But yeah, I see his point a little bit. Like, I do see how it kind of feels, because it knows it's talking about these issues that are like hotbed issues that polarized America forever. And he was treading lightly. And when you tread lightly, those are not something where a critic is going to be like, bold steps, Stevie, bold steps.
Yeah, you always run the risk of not just being surface level when you're trying to play it safe with something that's trying to be incisive commentary or incisive viewpoint.
But I mean, everything Stevie says is right. These are all helpful centrist things to say. It's just funny because I would say on the other side, you didn't go far enough, Stevie. You can really let him have it.
Yeah,
really.
you didn't go hard enough with this like Frank Capra Looney Tunes movie.
That's right.
Just the most wholesome shit.
Just like
this is.
I'm saying, go straight Brazil. Have Tom Hanks like die inside the ceiling and like hang out of it at the end of the movie. Like he's become absorbed by the machine. That's the movie I want to see.
Yep. He just tiles himself into the wall. Like a
Robert De Niro pops out in like a spacesuit. Anyway, yeah, this it's got mixed reviews. It did moderately well. I wouldn't call it a flop.
No, but
yeah.
that was sort of the rap it got at the time. Like people were not happy with this movie, so it sort of got saddled with the stink of being an embarrassing bomb for Spielberg, even though, as you pointed out, it made $220 million on a budget of 60. That's a win.
I mean, it is Stevie.
It is Stevie. That's yeah.
Yeah. What else? Anything?
I got nothing.
Then let's go. Let's cross this finish line as fast as we can. And we're going to enter our final phase. Our final form. Close Encounters of the Word Kind. Ooh, technically these are log lines for the films. So what we do is we like to play a little game here where at the end of these podcasts we like to list technically true log lines of the films that are, I don't know, humorous. Like, what are we here for? What are we doing?
They're mischievous.
They're mischievous, yeah.
We'll say each one, and then you'll think, God, these guys are a bunch of little stinkers.
These guys are little stinkers. They're little Spielboys. All right, so I got like 5. You want to go?
Sure.
All right.
Airports, am I right?
It is very much that movie. It is very, very much that movie.
Alternate. A man's flight gets delayed.
Yeah.
I figured that was too easy, so I wanted to come up with...
Stanley Tucci, powered by the potential of yachts, ruins a man's life.
Hell yeah, man. Yachts make people say yes when they should say no.
Yes. You get it.
Over the course of 10 brutal months trapped in a foreign country, a man learns he has no close friends or family.
Yeah, that's fucked.
Nobody's looking for him, Abe. Nobody's looking for him.
No one. He's the loneliest man.
Does he have a job? Because he's definitely fired.
Ugh.
Like,
poor man.
He's probably the subject of an Unsolved Mysteries episode.
That's true. He also probably stabbed someone.
That's true. Stabbed a police officer in the heart.
Krakosia Airlines. Yeah, fuck it. We'll fly one man to America. We don't give a shit.
They were about to... The whole ass plane was about to carry this man.
He's the only citizen who flew out of the country that day.
They made a whole stop for one man. A man leaves on a jazz pilgrimage and becomes the most famous missing persons case in his country's history. Victor Navorsky got on an airplane and was never seen again.
For an airport janitor, watching people almost die is, quote, the only fun he has. He later confesses to stabbing a man.
We really learn a lot about him from those two things. All right. Two weirdos go on an airport date.
Yeah, that really is all that happens in the movie. It's a lot of waiting.
Mm-hmm. And then
they have a date.
They are two little freaks.
The movie's over.
Two little freak weirdos.
A man is unable to wash his balls for weeks.
Oh, man, he's got to be smelling soupy. Hey, he dipping him in the toilet. Just kind of dip your undercarriage in there and flush the toilet a few times. It's like being it's like a bidet. It's like being in a washing machine.
Yeah, that's some out of the box thinking.
Hell yeah,
I like
man.
that, Tom.
Yeah, that's the kind of thinking that makes wall fountains in an airport.
Or zombie apocalypse leaders. All right.
A man is kidnapped by the U.S. government while trying to fulfill his father's unreasonable wish.
True. That is an unreasonable ask of your son who's never gone to a foreign country. Your, 55-year-old son.
Go track down this one saxophone player in a country of billions.
Find him.
And what's the best
only
thing is...
Only then your destiny.
He drives 15 minutes from the airport and just immediately sees this guy.
Yeah, it's like immediately right there, which is hilarious. All right, my last one. A construction foreman loses his mind at the abilities of a magic worker who appears out of nowhere, and he is terrified to intervene.
That's true. I forgot about that subplot.
Yeah, he's hiding behind a part of the wall, watching him work, and he goes like, "I'm afraid to even ask, man."
Right, like he thinks he's a genie or something.
He absolutely thinks he's a genie.
I don't want to make him angry.
This is the best thing that's ever happened to me. And that's Stop the Music. There we go. Close Encounters of the Word Kind, baby. And you know what that means, ding, ding, ding. That's a wrap on the episode.
Ah, man, that's another delightful installment of Spielboys. Abe, I'm so excited to be a Spielboy with you. I'm so glad we're doing this show.
When do we get our matching uniforms is all I want to know.
I mean, you say when.
Mm-hmm. And tattoos, right?
Yeah.
Get matching tattoos?
Obviously, yeah. No, I have the show artwork tattooed on my back.
Yes. Like your whole back.
Yeah, the entirety of my back, like I just got divorced.
Just a real divorce tattoo.
She said that's the most divorced tattoo.
Oh. The logo of a podcast
that I'm back. In. So it's like a tattoo of my own face on my back.
This is all I live for. This will never leave me, and we'll never leave you.
No.
That's a promise. We will be in your ear until you die. The last thing you will hear will be our voices. And that's what we want to say as the Spielboys. Tom, let's do the thing. Let's plug the things. Do Gamefully.
Right, what we plug. Well, this show is a joint project between Small Beans and Gamefully Unemployed, which is a network that I co-founded and co-host with David Bell. You can go over to our Patreon at patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed and find the other half of the Spielboys episodes, as well as the other half of the Star Trek The Next Futurama episodes, which is the show that Dave and Michael Swaim do together, as well as other great exclusive Gamefully Unemployed podcasts and other tiers. And we have a Discord with a great community. We watch movies with our patrons every Friday night. Go check us out there. We also have a bunch of free shows you can find just wherever you listen to podcasts, like you're listening to this one right now. And we also have a store. Head to gamefullyunemployed.com. You can find a link to our Teespring store where we have all kinds of cool stuff there. And I think that's about it. Follow us on the socials. Abe, you say words now.
Yeah, so here's the deal, is that you'll notice that this is a free episode, right? This episode is public immediately. So all the things that Tom said is true. And we're just doing this because we want people to know that this show exists. But yeah, that's the rub. If you want more of the show, you got to come to Small Beans Patreon, and you got to get Gamefully Unemployed Patreon and get the whole caboodle. But here in terms of Small Beans business, as you know, all the hubbub right now is about our movie Papa Bear, which has started our crowdfunding campaign. And that is basically because Michael and I are making a movie and we're trying to raise money right now, and you can help us do that. in order to make a movie this year by the end of the year. And the link that you're going to get, which will be in this description, is seedandspark.com/fun/Papa-Bear, or I should say Papa-Bear. And that will take you to our crowdfunding page. Please drop us a dime and help us make our dreams come true. And if you're interested in the project and getting involved, hit us up, because we're just looking for help in all directions. Little Small Beans business. When this comes out, if you look at the Small Beans fee, you're going to see we got a frame rate coming up that we're talking. Monty Python and the Holy Grail. We got more episodes of I'll Show You Mine If You Show Me Yours. More episodes of the show that Tom mentioned, which is Star Trek The Next Futurama. And we got a Director Piece Theater with Adam Ganzer and myself talking about movies, kind of like we do here, but in a more director way. And that's kind of what's up on the slate for Small Beans. Thank you for joining us here today. And I think that's everything that we wanted to say. Oh yeah, patreon.com/smallbeans. That's where you porter for all things related to this podcast as well. It's been a pleasure, my friend.
Every time, man. Every time.
Mm-hmm. I love you.
I love you. I love Stevie. I love movies.
I love Stevie.
Let's play ourselves out.
Oh God, yes.
Spielboys watching Stevie's movies. Spielboys watching Stevie's movies. Spielboys watching Stevie's movies.